May the peace and presence of the risen Christ be with each of you and all of us as we hunker down and continue to wait and pray for healing. The gospel for this coming Sunday gives us a character. John chapter 9. He's the man who was born blind, and Jesus heals him. And it's all about seeing and not seeing, that gospel. And so I want to share with you a story of a blind man that I'm recalling from my days in New York. Who would have thought that I would catch a fleeting glimpse of the reign of God in the bowels of the subway in New York City aboard the A train? Crowds pushing, angry exchanges, delays, twinges of fear, random violence, these made up the daily menu of those who took the subway. And everyone would wear that subway mask. Basically says, you leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. And now you see him waiting on the platform, tapping his stick, eyes shrouded in dark glasses and apparent blindness. A head buried in the daily news looks up, alerted by the tapping. From the midst of the dark tunnel comes the rumbling of an approaching train. Craning necks peering into the void are rewarded by a sliver of approaching light. Craning necks. The man with the cane wears an anxious expression. The man with the daily news looks intently into the onrushing light, then saunters over to the man with the cane. It's a train. You want it? The blind man nods gracefully. The doors open and release most of the population of the eastern seaboard. But I couldn't believe what I saw next. Usually people knock each other into next week in order to get a seat, including the handicapped, the elderly, and those great with child. But now they wait. Firm hands grasp the blind man's arm and guide him into the train. Then the others enter carefully. Several people simultaneously offer their seats, and he's guided to one. His self-important guardian, still clutching the daily news, asks him what stop he wants and hears Columbus Circle. As the train arrives at the appointed stop, people back up to make room, and the blind man is firmly and kindly guided off the train. As we pull away from the station, I look through the dirty window and see him being led to the stairway. It took 2 more stops before the faces on my train had rearranged themselves into the cold anonymity of a New York subway. As that train raced through the tunnel, I thought about that blind man, about his faith in hands he could feel and voices he could hear. I thought about his courage venturing into the hostile void in the faith that help would be near when he needed it. I thought about how his presence had changed our subway car into a caring community. I thought about the mundane character of this uncommon grace, a touch, a seeing voice, an offered seat, like a cup of cold water from a Samaritan well. And I thought that instead of breaking in, maybe the kingdom of God is breaking out in the dark and anonymous corners of our world. Like the song goes, if you want to catch a glimpse of God, just take the A train. I believe that we are both the blind man and the community on the subway. We are living in a time when we can't see the future, when we don't know what's going to happen next week. We don't know if we're going to be paid if this keeps going. We don't know who has the virus and who doesn't. Our whole world is disrupted. We go into the future blind. And yet we are also the community. For we are those on the subway who look for the most vulnerable, who make way for those who need us, who rearrange ourselves and our priorities so that we can be there for the most vulnerable and be there for each other. Our living is being transformed because, again, we go forth blind, but in faith. And we know that God will meet us and reach us through all of the people who touch our life. And so, as a congregation at St. Luke, all of us, not knowing the future, move forth knowing that the future is in God's hands. And we adjust our community and our Sunday morning worship habits so that the most vulnerable are comforted and touched. One of my favorite books is Diary of a Country Priest by George Bernanos. It records the thoughts of an ordinary parish priest, his struggles with the everyday and his attempts to be faithful and to pray. He is dying, and someone describes the last words of this priest as he dies. He said, "Does it matter? Grace is all around us." That's what the blind man found out on the A train. That's what you and I will find out every day. Grace is all around us. And the one who healed the man born blind is the one who is with us always. I end with a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He said this in a letter, one of the letters he wrote from jail. "We used to think that one of the inalienable rights of persons was that one should be able to plan both one's professional and private life. This is a thing of the past. The force of circumstances has brought us into a situation where we have to give up being anxious about tomorrow. But it makes all the difference whether we accept this willingly and in faith or under continual constraint. For most people, the compulsory abandonment of planning for the future means that they are forced back into living just for the moment, irresponsibly, frivolously, or resignedly. Some dream longingly of a better time to come and try to forget the present. We find both these courses equally impossible, and there remains only the very narrow way, often extremely difficult to find, of living every day as if it were our last. Yet living in faith and responsibility as though there were to be a great future." And then he quotes from Jeremiah. "Houses and fields and vineyards shall again be bought in this land," proclaims the prophet, in paradoxical contrast to the bleakness of his time. "It is a sign from God and a pledge of a fresh start and a great future, just when all seems bleak." If you want to catch a glimpse of God, take the A train. God's peace be with you.